Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. It is a football Monday, which means it's time to report for game day at Hooters of Colorado Springs with craveable wings, ice cold beer, plenty of big screen TVs, and the world famous Hooters girls. It is the number one franchise in the league. Tonight, catch the fan filler. 10 boneless wings, fries, a dressing, and a drink for only $16.59. And while football will be the primary topic of discussion today, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. And let's start with football, shall we? As disappointing as Thursday night was, right? The lead that the Broncos had, only to squander it and lose a game in which they could have clinched their first playoff berth in 9 years. It was kind of predictable, right? There are a few teams in the National Football League where game in and game out, you kind of know what you're going to get. Some teams vary week to week. I would say there are a few teams, though, that are quite predictable. You know that no matter the opponent, every single week, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win by 7, with very rare exceptions. You know that if there is a relatively short distance to travel for a fourth down, the Detroit Lions are going to go for it. And you know that if the Broncos go up against a bad team, they will win. And if they go up against a good team, they will lose. That has been their identity this year. If there's a team on their schedule that is not very good, they will beat them. And if there's a team that is very good or good on their schedule, they will lose to them. Without fail. And Thursday was another example of that. And you can't say you were full of confidence in the Denver Broncos going into that game. Especially with the way they played the last 2 weeks. Or last 2 games, I should say. There's a bye week mixed in there. The way they played against Cleveland and Indianapolis should not have engendered confidence for the Denver Broncos to finally beat a quote-unquote good team for the first time this year. They made mistakes in the Cleveland game, in the Indy game, that against a good team would have cost them. But they stay in the game, and they're able to pounce on an even bigger mistake that their opponents committed. But here's the thing about good teams. They don't make those mistakes. They make very few mistakes, period. But they certainly don't make the big mistake. And the Chargers didn't make the big mistake. The Broncos were waiting. There was no wide receiver passing back to the quarterback. There were no pick sixes to be had. The Chargers never made that big mistake, and the Broncos could not find a way to win a game under those circumstances. The teams that the Broncos lose to don't make those mistakes. So the Broncos end up making those mistakes. They compound. They can never swing the pendulum back the other way. And Thursday was a perfect example of this. Broncos started off that game perfectly. Perfectly. What were the two things I said on Thursday going into that game that they had to do? And you knew that they had to do these things. They had to start off better than they did the last time they played the Chargers. And they had to run the football. And guess what? They did both on their very first drive. Could not have started better. First half, for the most part, went great. Then what happened? Little bit of clock mismanagement at the end of the first half lets the Chargers end up exploiting a rule that hasn't been exploited since the Ford administration. And now all of a sudden 21-13 feels wildly different than 21-10. It's only 3 points. It meant the world in that game. Then instead of being in a position to potentially land a knockout blow, or at least extending their lead, they have to chase the points that they gave LA. They gave LA those points. Mismanagement of the clock, and then an unfortunate fair catch interference penalty gave the Chargers those points. Broncos had to get those points back. So in a way, it felt like the Broncos were chasing the game even though they were still in front. There was this sense of needing to get back points rather than tacking on, rather than adding to their lead because of what they did at the end of the first half to give LA points. Then more penalties, Stranad with the roughing the passer on one drive, offsides on another, leads to 2 Charger touchdowns. Yet, Broncos still with the chance to win the game, 6 or 7 minutes left. Ball control offense, drive down the field, either tie it, take the lead, don't leave the Chargers much time to answer. And what's the first thing that Sean Payton does? Call a pass play. Despite him writing "run it" in big letters on the top of his play sheet, and despite Bo Nix being heavily pressured every time he dropped back in that game, Sean Payton's like, we're going to throw it. Bo Nix gets sacked. They're behind the chains. They can never recover. They punt away. No surprise. The Chargers go right down the field and put the game away. The Broncos were never able to swing the pendulum back their way. Even with as good of a start as they got, it took that set piece kick, whatever the heck it's called, free kick, completely swung the game, and the Broncos could never get it back. Why? Because Justin Herbert is not Jameis Winston. Because the LA Chargers are not the Indianapolis Colts. The Broncos could never take it back. It has been the story of this entire season. It's been the story the entire season. The end of the half and that drive I was referring to with about 6 or 7 minutes to go, those were the two spots where Sean Payton needed to help his team. They were drowning. And he needed to throw them a life preserver with his play calling. And he didn't. He chose not to, for whatever reason. And Sean Payton deserves the lion's share of the credit for where the Broncos are today. He and Vance Joseph, absolutely. The Broncos are still incredibly flawed as a football team. They have major shortcomings, but they have been compensated for a lot by Sean Payton and Vance Joseph with their play calling, with their game plan. But there have been times where they have not been able, call it bail out their team, call it covering up warts, whatever you want to call it. They haven't been able to do that. And really, it's been the second half of this season. Take away the results for a moment. Just think about all of these games in the second, really since the Baltimore game. Really since the Baltimore game, Sean Payne and Vance Joseph have not been able to help the team as much as they did at the beginning of the season. And against Baltimore, against Kansas City, against LA, it cost them. Against teams like the Raiders and the Colts and the Browns, it was just that their opponent had those bigger mistakes that the Broncos were able to pounce on. It didn't burn them. But this has been a mistake-prone team for many games. And it just cost them against the good teams, which is the way of the world. I mean, this shouldn't be a news flash to anybody. Good teams will expose your weaknesses. Good teams will punish you for your mistakes. Teams like the Raiders, the Colts, the Browns, they don't do that. They make their own mistakes that are even bigger. So the Broncos, Bo Nix, the way he's played the last couple of weeks, wasn't good. But they were able to find ways to win. And credit to them. But again, there are levels to this. And the clear next level for this Denver Broncos team is to beat a team that matters. Right? Beat a team that matters. What's the Broncos' signature win this year? Because in many ways, you could look across the conference to the other conference and look at Washington. Washington's kind of the NFC version of the Broncos in a lot of different ways. Washington yesterday picked up their signature win. That's the win that people will look at and say, this is what the Commanders are capable of. Driving down the field at the end of the game and beating the best defense in the NFL. What's the comparable game for the Denver Broncos? Week 3 against Tampa? They don't have one of those wins. Or the one that you would say they have only shows that they're better than the doldrums of the league. They don't have this great signature win. And that's the next step for them to go. Jaden Daniels is going to win Rookie of the Year now, based on what he did yesterday. He's going to win. The Rookie of the Year is over. Bo Nix doesn't have that. So it costs the Broncos the Offensive Rookie of the Year to whatever extent it matters. But where this team is, who this team is one that picks on the lesser NFL teams, but cannot beat its better teams. And the unfortunate part of all this, because all this would be fine in a rebuilding year. But now there's an additional part of this season, at least we think, although it's coming down to the wire. There are only 2 chances left for the Denver Broncos to get this done and push it across the finish line and get into the postseason. But the problem is they're going to go in the postseason and they're going to meet one of these teams that is good. And given what we've seen during the regular season, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to compound. They're never going to be able to swing the momentum, and they'll get unceremoniously bounced from the postseason. And then they move on, and hopefully they're better for the experience. But Thursday was an opportunity for them to say, no, we can beat these kind of teams. We can beat the teams that you would label good. Didn't do it. They were the ones making all the mistakes. They were the ones that could never swing the momentum. They were the ones panicking, even though they were leading on the scoreboard, because they knew what was coming. That's just the next level for this Broncos team to go. Every team goes through it when they're rebuilding. Would Saturday be that signature win? Would that be the game where people would be like, yeah, Broncos can be good teams? It's not going to mean that with Cincinnati's record. We'll talk about that Cincinnati matchup coming up in a little bit. In the meantime, I'll take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next on the show, why it may be the beginning of the end, truly, for one member of the Denver Nuggets. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Busy night last night. Both the Nuggets and the Avalanche were in action, and the Denver Nuggets were 4 minutes away last night. 4 minutes away from having a repeat of what happened in Washington. You remember that Wizards game, right? How it felt like the rock bottom of the Nuggets season. Last night could have been that. Every reason for the Nuggets to bounce back in a major way after what happened to them in Portland. I watched it with my own eyes. I was in the building and I saw what happened to them. They had every reason to bounce back from that game and every expectation that they should have. Surely the Nuggets would learn the lesson from the previous game where they waited till the fourth quarter to come back on Portland. Surely they'd say, let's make it easier on ourselves. Let's start off the game better. Let's play better through the first three quarters. Then we don't have to have this major comeback at the end. Surely they would not risk losing another game to a team in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes because they've lost to enough of them already. And they're at home. All these reasons. Last night should not even been competitive. And yet it was, and yet the Nuggets were very nearly dropped again by one of the worst teams in the NBA. And that's the thing here. It's not so much like I go back to the Portland game. It's not so much that they lost that game. Okay, it happens. You don't go in with the requisite effort, tough trip, whatever, a building you don't like, you're a little bit off. Like, it's not any given Sunday in the NBA, but there's still kind of that vibe to it. You can lose to a team like Washington or Portland or New Orleans or Utah in a vacuum. Right? It happens. In the best example that I can ever recall is, do you know when the Bulls had their historic season, who one of their losses was to? Of course you do. It was the Nuggets. When the Nuggets were bad. They beat those record-setting Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls. It can happen in a vacuum. But the problem with the Washington game is that it was coming on the heels of a game against Houston where they were kind of outclassed by a team that they're going to have to battle with for seeding, maybe in a playoff series. They were outclassed. And then you go into Washington and you should be licking your chops at the prospect of just boat racing this team. They're hapless. They're pathetic. And they lost to them. So it's the same thing with this Portland to New Orleans swing. It's not that they lost to Portland. That's a bad night. I mean, it's an embarrassing loss. You shouldn't lose to Portland. They're not very good. All that kind of stuff. But it happens. Right? But you better bounce back the next game, especially if it's against a team at the same level. Learn your lessons and bounce back for the next game. You know, Michael Malone calls it a character building win. I think it makes it somewhat more frustrating that they came back, because then you're like, where was this 3 quarters ago? Why do you need to be knocked down repeatedly to pick yourself back up? Why can't you just take the fight to your opponent, especially one that will cave as easily as Portland or Washington or New Orleans will? It wouldn't have taken much. But yet they find themselves in that situation again, 4 minutes away from following up the Portland loss with the loss to New Orleans. And it's the same story on why every one of these games. It's some combination of energy, effort, ability. You pick out on any particular night what you think the main culprit is. They can't stop anybody. That game in Portland, they couldn't stop Portland for anything. And that's been the biggest culprit here. The defending of this basketball team is not where it needs to be. And they should be able to clamp down a team as ravaged by injuries as New Orleans is, as devoid of talent as Washington and Portland are. Those should be the get-right games. And instead, you're sitting there sweating out the result, thinking that the Nuggets are going to lose to another single-digit win team. Last night, energy effort felt like the main culprit and the main perpetrator. And as much as I've been sticking up for this guy lately, it was Michael Porter. It was. And there is an easy thing to point to on where the Nuggets turned this game around. And it had nothing to do with Nikola Jokic. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. They subbed out Michael Porter. Michael Porter ends up playing 23 minutes of a 53-minute game in which Michael Malone only plays 9 players. So it's not like he went deep into his bench. Michael Porter plays 23 minutes last night and is a -10. And his removal from the game directly correlated to the Nuggets coming back. And when you couple that fact with the body language, you got to wonder if some of this outside noise is getting to him. Which you wouldn't think, right? Because of what he dealt with last year. With everything that happened with his brother, it felt like Michael Porter was good about putting those blinders on and removing that outside noise. Perhaps the difference is he's the one that's being talked about in the news. Maybe it's easier, as difficult of a situation as he dealt with his brother. Perhaps it's a little bit easier for him to put that aside and leave that alone when he steps onto the court because it's not him. Now it's him that's being talked about. The chances that he could be traded, that he is somehow being held up as the reason for the Nuggets' ills and what they can do to make themselves better. Get rid of Michael Porter. That's not necessarily what these conversations are about. It's more about what the Nuggets actually have of value to offer. But I'm theorizing. I'm just looking at it. Maybe all of these trade conversations have seeped into his game for a night. Right? Because this time last week, he was the second best player on the Denver Nuggets. Second most consistent player on the Denver Nuggets. I mean, the nice thing for him and the nice thing for the Nuggets is that, once again, they turn around and play tonight. So I don't look at last night as some great win. I don't. I look at it as another game that they messed around against a team that they should have no business losing to, and they nearly messed around and lost again. And I said after the Washington game, I'm waiting for the next time. It makes you wonder when the next time is. That was almost last night. You lose to Portland and you turn around on your home floor and lose to New Orleans. Because here's the other thing, too, with the Nuggets. We're beyond, they don't get benefit of the doubt anymore. Okay, right now we're all trying to figure out whether they're even close to the same team they were 2 years ago. There's no benefit of the doubt. Oh, they just, whatever. They were taking it easy. They can't take it easy. The questions that are being asked about this team, they have to come out every single night and prove that they are the team they believe they are. We're beyond benefit of the doubt. We got to figure out if this Nuggets team is even good enough to win a title. And not that beating the Pelicans by 30 would change that, but certainly losing to New Orleans would certainly change that, would it not? To the other way. This team has to prove themselves all over again. I mean, they said that last year, right? We got to prove it again. We won a title, we got to prove it. Really, they don't. Because any bad spell they went through last year, it was completely written off. Well, it's okay. No, Nuggets are a championship team. Don't worry about it. We're not at that stage anymore. Now they have to prove themselves all over again. And losing to teams like Washington and Portland and being 4 minutes away from losing to New Orleans, that doesn't help their cause. But unlike the NFL, another game tonight, Phoenix, first of two against the Suns. They'll play tonight. And then, of course, in Phoenix on Christmas. We'll see if it's better for Michael Porter and the Denver Nuggets. So much of this is just about effort. What did Russell, who's the guy that came in for Porter? Westbrook. And what did he do? He dove for a bunch of loose balls. He hustled around. He played some defense. And the Nuggets turned it around. It's the same thing against Portland. So much of this is just effort. Nuggets are far more talented than these teams. If they just bring the requisite energy and effort, they blow out these teams. But wasn't there last night. Wasn't there against Portland until the fourth quarter. Wasn't there against Washington. I mean, you want to talk about this through the lens of the college football playoff. If we talked about other sports like we talk about the college football playoff, man, Nuggets would have some really bad losses on their schedule. 719-247-1313. At least there are the Avs, though. Everything going right with them. We'll talk about it next. Avalanche also in action last night against the Seattle Kraken. And they won. Yoel Kiviranta had a hat trick, although you got to hang a bit of an asterisk on it, just like a mental asterisk. 2 empty netters, like, okay, like it's a hat trick, but, just glad that Yoel Kiviranta has another hat trick in his career that can be discussed instead of the other one that everyone, it's almost like it's like Voldemort. Like everybody is aware of Yoel Kiviranta's other hat trick. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's the hat trick that shall not be named. Even Connor McGahey on his call last night made mention of the other, they call it the other hat trick that it's now the other hat trick. Before it was the hat trick that Yoel Kiviranta has in his history. I don't, Voldemort. I don't subscribe to that. Like, look, I'll say his name if I want to. I do not have such a superstition. I don't think we, should be worried about mentioning his name out loud. We can talk about Yoel Kiviranta's now other hat trick. It was against the Avs in a playoff game. It stung if you're an Avs fan. Let's talk about it. Let's move past it. Ignoring it doesn't do anything. Although now he has another one. So I guess it worked. It worked out. We repressed those memories for long enough, and now he has another one that when you think of Yoel Kiviranta hat trick, think of last night. But here's the bigger story with the Avs. And I apologize in advance to the person who had it's somebody on the Avs beat. And I should look it up and give them proper credit. I'm just saying I didn't find this out. I saw it online. Since Alexander Georgiev was pulled in the first period of the Buffalo Sabres game, the team with the best save percentage in the NHL is the Colorado Avalanche. The best save percentage. Think about that. Avs fans were just looking for like a save percentage over 900. That was it. That was the baseline. Just get over 900 because anything less than 900, you're just not that good of a goaltender. 900 for a save percentage is decent goaltending percentage, right? Just get there. Avs have the best save percentage in the NHL. And they truly have, and I was talking to DJ about this earlier. DJ Michaels, sometimes producer of the show, produces Air Force women's basketball, switchbacks, all that kind of stuff. If you listen to this station enough, you hear me talking to him or about him. We were talking about this earlier. There is a real Boston Bruins vibe right now with this Avalanche goaltending duo. And right now, it feels like Jared Bednar can go one or the other and get the desired result, whether it's Wedgwood, whether it's Blackwood. It has Swayman Omark vibes to it. And the relationship between these two guys is really good because they were in New Jersey together, and it has that, which is a good thing, except when you get in the postseason, right? We know that the Bruins in the postseason hasn't been great. The good news with that is it's not truly 1A, 1B. It feels that way, but it's not. Like Mackenzie Blackwood is the guy. If he's healthy, he's the guy throughout the postseason. That's what they acquired him to be. So right now, it feels like the Avs can go either guy and get the result that they want, the level of goaltending that they need. And they're getting above the level of goaltending they were even asking for. But come playoff time, it's Mackenzie Blackwood's net. He's going to have to be the guy. He's going to have to be the Darcy Kemper. They're not going to go back and forth. And I think with the Bruins, there was a little bit of that, like, well, now who do we go with? So the relationship between the two, the vibes, all that kind of stuff, it feels similar, but there is a clear-cut guy that the Nuggets, that the Avalanche are pinning their Stanley Cup hopes to. And that's Mackenzie Blackwood, not Scott Wedgwood. But it's nice that both guys are doing the job for him. And actually, I should correct myself. They're not pinning anything on Mackenzie Blackwood. Let's be real about that. They're not pinning their Stanley Cup hopes on him. Their Stanley Cup hopes are in Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Cale Makar, et cetera, et cetera. What they're pinning on Mackenzie Blackwood is don't screw this up. That's what it is. Just don't screw this up. We got this. Got to get healthy, and you know how I feel about splitting up Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. I don't like it, but I understand the utility for it right now. And it certainly worked out last night. But eventually, Casey Middlestat is going to have to stand on his own. And he's going to have to generate offense for that second line without Mikko Rantanen next to him. It will help when Jonathan Drouin comes back. But McKinnon and Rantanen need to play together. And Casey Middlestat was brought in, speaking of why guys were brought in and what job they're asked to do. Middlestat, with his passing ability, was supposed to bring the offense to that second line without them needing to go to Rantanen. Now, with Drouin out, you could see it a little bit. Understand why Jared Bednar does that. And it's working. Avs are scoring goals. Look at the number of goals the Avs have scored over the last few games. And I get it. It's not the best that the league has to offer. Right? So they're hanging 4, 5, 6 goals on teams. Yeah, I know it's the Sharks, the Ducks, and the Kraken. But the most important thing here about this stretch is that they keep banking wins because they should be. The schedule sets up for them to bank a lot of wins going into the new year. And they're winning these games because the bottom isn't falling out in their goaltending. But these games shouldn't make you feel like necessarily the Avs are the best team in the league. Let's see them go against Dallas and Winnipeg and teams like that and prove it there. That's what those games are for. But right now, this should be a stretch where the Avalanche are racking up wins and putting themselves in a position. I don't know if they're ever going to catch Winnipeg. I'm just looking at the standings right now. They're still 9 points back of Winnipeg. I don't know that they're ever going to catch them. But they're 2 points back of Minnesota, and Minnesota has 2 games in hand. There's no reason to think that when the calendar turns to 2025, that the Avs, even with Minnesota having games in hand, that the Avs can't be ahead of them. And then you see what happens with the Jets. But this is an important stretch to make up some of the results that they gave away because of goaltending. And the goaltending's been great. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Avs, Nuggets, Broncos. Got this in on Instagram, and apparently I can't do this with the live stream, even though you're watching me on Instagram. I can't put up the comments like I can if you interact on Facebook or Twitter. I don't know why that is. Mighty Canadian Army says, Ryan, was it just me or were the ESPN announcers for the playoff terrible and biased? I think there is a bias built in with ESPN. Or at least there's a perceived bias that ESPN has done very little to dissuade people of. And it has to do with a certain conference. Bad, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I mean, there are some announcers that are better than others, certainly. I didn't watch the games this weekend and say it was bad announcing. But as far as the bias, there is, you want to talk about the Voldemort, Yoel Kiviranta hat trick thing? There is a conference that if you're on the airwaves of ESPN, if you are saying something negative, you better not mention them. Right? And it could be just perceived, could be in my head, but guess what they have not been able to do? Dissuade me of my belief that they are not allowed to be critical of a certain conference. And I think you know the conference. And it's funny to me that all the talk about, SMU didn't deserve to get in. Indiana didn't deserve to get in. Look at how they got clowned. And then the late game on Saturday rolled around, and I'm waiting for Lane Kiffin's tweet. I'm waiting. Where is it? Anybody going to loop in Tennessee with SMU and Indiana? Anybody going to say Tennessee shouldn't be in there? Where's Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin, the big truth teller on social media, calling these teams out. Keep saying, we'd be better than them. We'd be better than them. Well, he has every reason to say that Ole Miss should be in over Tennessee. Look at how bad Tennessee was against Ohio State. Where's the tweet? I don't see a tweet. Oh, because it's the SEC? We can't say that they didn't deserve to be in because all SEC teams deserve to be in. Let's call it for what it is, and we'll talk about what happened in the college football playoff next hour. But let's call it what it is. Like, all three of those teams embarrassed themselves in the first round of the playoffs. All three of those teams look severely outmatched by their opponents. One from the Big Ten, one from the ACC, and yes, one from the SEC. All three of those teams looked equally outmatched. All three of these teams would warrant the question of whether they actually deserve to be in, but yet only SMU and Indiana got that hate. Why? Why were some of the most vocal people in the college football world so quiet when Ohio State was absolutely dismantling Tennessee? It's curious, don't you think? Or it's really not. 719-247-1313. Get into the college football playoff. Because that wasn't great. Neither was the Broncos' second half performance against the Chargers. But guess what? This season was never about that Charger game. Tell you what it is about next. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Monday before the big day for many of us. Hopefully you are a little bit more responsible than yours truly and have no reason to go after work to any stores. Appreciate you tuning in. You can watch the show on our social media platforms, as many more of you on a daily basis are starting to do. Whether it's Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, at XTRA Sports 1300 is the handle for that. Tonight, Green Bay and New Orleans, we have it for you here on Extra Sports 1300, and I can tell you for a fact that it will be on the screen. Speaking of going out to stores, it will be on the big screens at Hooters of Colorado Springs, the place to report to for game day. Tonight, fan filler. How's it sound? 10 boneless wings, fries, a dressing, and a drink for only $16.59. If you are as behind on your list as I am, you may need that pit stop for a couple of hours. But get into Hooters for all the football action. You know, as disappointing as Thursday night was, if you're a Broncos fan, and as somewhat predictable as it was if you're me, this stretch run of the Broncos season was never about how they fared on Thursday. Sean Payton saw to it. Broncos went into the bye week with 2 games on their mind. Not that they wouldn't try to win all 4. Bo Nix last week said we got 3 games to win 3 games, and then we're going to win games to go to the Super Bowl, or we're going to try to win games to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to try to win all these. But the games that matter the most, the games that the Broncos had to have, were Indy and Cincinnati. That's why Sean Payton allowed the game against the Chargers to get flexed. He wanted as much time as he could get to get ready for Cincinnati, or would rather have more time. Maybe that's the better way to put it. Sure, he'd like more time to prepare for the Chargers, but if a game was going to get flexed, he'd rather he get more time to prepare for Cincinnati than for the Chargers. 1, because the Broncos know the Chargers better than the Bengals. But 2, because the consequence of them making or missing the playoffs was always going to be more with Cincinnati. Now, if they got the job done on Thursday, all the better. But the plan was get Indy, get Cincy, we're in, and we'll take our chances with LA and Kansas City. See what happens. We'll prepare like we're trying to win. We'll try to win those games, but even if it doesn't happen, we know we have Indy and Cincinnati. This is the one on Saturday that will really be a gut punch. This is the one that people will be distraught over if the Broncos don't get. LA, disappointing, certainly. They beat Cincinnati, all good. Right? Because that's the goal here. Get into the postseason and do it by beating the teams that you've proven you can beat all season long. Right? Cincinnati is one of those teams that the Broncos time and time again this year have found ways to beat. They've blown some teams out like Cincinnati. They've won close games against teams like Cincinnati, but they always seem to win. If there is a team that you look at and you're like, I don't really know if they're playoff caliber, Broncos beat them. That's who they've been all season long. Teams that you look at and say they're playoff caliber, Broncos aren't beating those teams. And don't bring up the NFC South. I know you're going to bring up the NFC South. If I could take the NFC South's automatic bid and give it to another division, I would. Congratulations, NFC North. You now get 2 automatic spots. If I could make the NFC South battle for a wild card, I would. But alas, those aren't the rules, and one of them is going to get in automatically because they won their division. Doesn't mean they're playoff caliber. This is the kind of game that the Broncos have proven they can win and proven it time and time again. But that doesn't mean that Saturday is not tricky. In the Cincinnati Bengals, you have the most two-faced team, most Jekyll, I want to say Jekyll, I guess I'll use Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this regard. It's not that they, on a week-to-week basis, you don't know what you're going to get. It's not the unpredictability of the Browns, in fact, or of the Bengals. In fact, they're incredibly predictable. They're incredibly predictable. I know what I'm going to get from the Bengals every single week. I'm going to get a dynamic, explosive offense that's going to put up a ton of points, and I'm going to get a defense that has Trey Hendrickson getting a few sacks and the rest of the defense getting absolutely run over. That's the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals. That's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll is Joe Burrow in the offense. Mr. Hyde is that defense. That defense is ugly, and it is evil if you are a Bengals fan. It has been causing you all sorts of problems. If their defense was even okay, this team might be sitting atop the AFC North right now. And that's not to disparage Pittsburgh or Baltimore. That's to say, because of how good the Bengals offense is, even a mediocre Bengals defense, and the Bengals aren't even sweating it, let alone having to go on, of 4 or 5 straight wins to close out a season just to get in. So that's what makes Saturday so tricky. Overall, the Cincinnati Bengals are the type of team that the Broncos have built their resume on, built their playoff candidacy on beating teams like Cincinnati. Home road doesn't matter. But that doesn't mean Cincinnati's not dangerous. And the one side of the football that has really benefited from the ineptitude of its opponents is the defense. Right? Jameis Winston's pick sixes, Anthony Richardson's mistakes. Joe Burrow's not going to make those. At least you can't expect it. Even when this team was losing to Baltimore in some of these other teams, their offense was putting up a ton of points. That no one's been able to stop this Bengals offense in 2 months. Now, the credit you give the Broncos defense is that they're probably the best defense that Cincinnati will face in the last 2 months of the season. But that's obviously the side of the football, the phase of the game, where if Denver's going to blow this and not win this game and have to put all their eggs into the unpredictable basket that is Kansas City, I still don't know what that game's going to look like. Who's playing, who's not. I actually don't think Patrick Mahomes hurt his ankle at all. I think he's fibbing. Because I saw times that Justin Herbert on Thursday looked like he had a hurt ankle. I didn't see one play in the Houston game where I'm like, oh, Patrick Mahomes, there's that ankle flaring up on him. Either the guy has become impervious to high ankle sprains, or perhaps his injury was a little bit blown out of proportion. Either way, he's on the injury report. It's being discussed. Chiefs can wrap up the number 1 seed on Wednesday, but do they want to play? Do they want to sit everybody for back-to-back weeks, for 2 weeks leading into the first playoff game? Broncos can put an end to all that on Saturday. And one player that would really help is Riley Moss. What's that? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. You don't know what you got till it's gone. I don't think Riley Moss is nearly as good as Pat Surtain, but I tell you what, Riley Moss is head and shoulders above anyone else they have stuck on the other side of Pat Surtain over the last few games. When the two of them are in there, it works. It's a very difficult secondary to beat. And when you talk about Burrow in this offense, it's your secondary that needs to be put on notice. Your secondary has to be right. It would definitely help to have Riley Moss. And Sean Payton said he hopes that Riley Moss will play on Saturday. We'll see how he, updates through the week and everything like that. That would certainly help, having him. But I think this is the type of game that the Broncos are going to win. And if I'm going to sit here and say that losing to the Chargers was predictable because of this identity that the Broncos have carved out, I got to be fair and say that Cincinnati's the type of team that the Broncos keep beating. This could be a shootout. But Sean Payton has shown against these weaker defenses, he goes into his bag. He gets really creative, and he draws up some big plays. Those were almost completely absent from the performance on Thursday. They could not get the ball down the field. Should be able to against Cincinnati. And please run it. I don't know how much bigger Sean Payton can write it on his play sheet. And he was kind of musing the other day, like he doesn't love the fact that TV cameras feel like they could just zoom in on his card. I think the better question is, why didn't you read the other side of your card? We all saw it. The TV camera saw it. Why didn't you see it? Because it seemed like at crucial junctures of the game, end of the first half, about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you did not look at that side of your play sheet. They should be able to run the football. And why they abandoned it is going to be one of the great mysteries of this Denver Broncos season. But if they beat Cincinnati, it won't matter nearly as much. That game Saturday, by the way. So Broncos will get one less day. Still, more time than they normally get to prepare for an opponent. Should help them out. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Broncos. Coming up next, the college football playoff jumped very high off of their diving board and belly flopped into the pool. We'll talk about it next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. So much anticipation for the newly expanded college football playoff, and the premiere of said playoff went about as well as the premiere of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. Google it, kids. All this excitement quickly turning into abject horror, leading people across the country to see what else was on. They didn't even know. They weren't making any other plans. They were locked in for college football, and the product was so bad that they had to find something else. Thankfully, the NFL was there. Everyone was getting mad at the NFL. Why are you impinging on their day? It's college football's big day, and you got to have your 2 games on there because you're the NFL. Well, at least the 2 NFL games were good. And it was, for the first 2, man, it was so good for the SEC. Oh, the SEC was loving it. Indiana, Kurt Signetti punting in plus territory because he doesn't believe in his offense's ability to move the ball down the field. SMU just absolutely wetting the bed. Just the SEC was reveling in. Alabama could do better. Why isn't Alabama in? See, we told you so. Lane Kiffin, good job, college football playoff. You did great with these matchups. And then the late game on Saturday rolled around. And things got quiet. Lane Kiffin wasn't tweeting. The criticism wasn't as loud as it had been earlier in the day or the night before. I wonder why. Did it dawn on nobody that Alabama might do better against Ohio State than Tennessee? Did that not occur to anybody? Would that not be true? If it's true for SMU, if it's true for, what about Tennessee? Tennessee arguably was the worst. You look at scoring margin, Tennessee had the worst showing. Other than SMU, I'm sorry. SMU still would have been the worst. But why were they quiet? Because it's SEC. Can't go against the SEC. Destroy the Big Ten, destroy the ACC, the Big 12, do whatever you want. Leave the SEC alone. Do not say anything bad about them. Tennessee was just as bad as the rest of them. So, and this isn't about the committee getting it wrong. The committee got right. The problem is there just aren't that many great teams in college football. There just aren't. And it was on full display this weekend. There is a still, even with NIL and the transfer portal, there's still a ruling class of college football, and it's going to take a lot. We're still in the infancy of this. It feels like we've been dealing with the nonsense with NIL and the transfer portal for a decade now. Only been dealing with it for a couple of years. It's going to take time. College football will become deeper, more balanced eventually. Right now, there is still a group of teams that run college football, and it doesn't matter what conference you're from. If you're not one of those teams, you're going to get your butt kicked. just the fact of the matter. If we swapped out SMU for Alabama, would Alabama have played a little bit better than SMU did? Yeah, because SMU absolutely wet the bed. But would they have won? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Would they have beaten Ohio State? Of course not. So this isn't about the committee getting it wrong. They just had to fill in the rest with a bunch of teams that probably didn't deserve to be there. Look at it like the 7th seed in the NFL. And look at the two teams that have it right now, Washington and Denver. Between them, they have one good win. One. And it was yesterday. Washington beating Philadelphia. That's it. The rest of the year, both of them have picked on lesser teams to get to where they are. And it happens every year. What happens every year in the NFL, one of these games on Wild Card Weekend is an absolute dud. Why? Because it features a team that is probably not really good enough to be in the playoffs, but they just so happen to be there because you got to find a 7th team in each conference. It's the same thing with college football, and they expanded too much. If they expand to 8, we still may get some of this. Like, there just aren't enough really good college football teams, but we're at peace. We should be at peace with the trade that we made. We as a society, by giving college football our patronage, by complaining about it for years, expand the playoff, we knowingly or unknowingly made a swap that in order to give more teams access, to give more fan bases real hope that they would play for a national championship, we watered down the product. And I'm all for access too. I think they gave too much access. There's too many teams in the college football playoff, but I'm okay with the idea of expansion, knowing that we're going to get some games like this. But let's be real here. If they didn't expand and we got Oregon and Ohio State and we got Georgia and we got Texas, that would be good enough. We have to be honest here. It would be good enough from a competitive standpoint. How many of these teams, when the bracket was released, did you really think had a chance at a national title? 3, maybe 4? These other teams were just filler, just giving us more to watch, and that's fine. It's okay. But we can't sit and complain that, the college football was so terrible. Well, what did you expect? They weren't picking from these great teams that would be on the outside looking in. They were trying to fill in the blanks. They didn't have enough quality teams to put in this bracket. And maybe the one thing I will put on the committee to an extent is if they seeded it correctly, or if the rules were in place for them to seed it correctly and not give these automatic buys and give them to the teams that truly deserve them. Maybe we have Boise State and Arizona State playing this weekend, and maybe the games are better. But I think the most important thing is that there just aren't enough good college football teams right now. Aren't great college football teams. They're good. There are plenty of good ones. Ones that can legitimately win an NFL. I just heard Dan Patrick before the top of the hour. 4 juggernauts. And I'll cling to the Ravens for dear life and still say that the Ravens are a Super Bowl contender. But everyone agrees Buffalo, Kansas City, Detroit, Philadelphia. Whether you believe in the Ravens or not, and then everyone else is just playing for a participation trophy. None of these other teams have a legitimate chance of winning a Super Bowl. College football, even more so. The list might even be smaller than that. That's the trade-off that we made when we pounded the table and said we want an expanded playoff. You're going to let in some teams that would have what happened to Indiana and SMU and Clemson and even, yes, Tennessee out of the mighty SEC. It was going to happen. And I don't think it's going to get much better yet. I think this next round could be full of blowouts. And then we'll settle in to the 4 teams, and I would hope and expect the games to be better. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the college football playoff this weekend. Coming up next, you may have seen the U.S. Senior Open coming back to the Broadmoor. What to expect this summer? The executive director of that fine golf tournament will join me next. For the third time, the U.S. Senior Open will be visiting the East Course at the Broadmoor, right down the street here in Colorado Springs. It will happen in June. Get you the all the pertinent details as we move along, but wanted to let you know that if you had not heard. And joining me now to discuss this summer's event is the executive director of the 45th U.S. Senior Open Championship. He is Doug Habgood. Doug, good to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just getting ready for the holidays. And as you and I were chatting on the phone before we went on air here, you guys have helped me out immensely when it comes to my Christmas shopping, because what a great gift it would be for the golf fan or the sports fan in your family, or even somebody who, just as a unique event, I think more than anything else, right? Like if you're a golf fan, obviously you're interested. If you're a sports fan, you're interested. But even somebody in Colorado Springs that wants to be a part of a unique big time event, this would be perfect for them.
Yeah, no, I think that we're happy to fill that void for all of you last minute shoppers out there. But, I think you make a great point, because this event, obviously is a golf championship. It's very prestigious, but we get fans that understand every nuance of the game, and we have fans out there that don't know the first thing about golf, but still have a great time. So it's a great atmosphere, and lots of families out there, and lots of options to get engaged, whether it's through tickets or volunteering, even participating in different ways. So it's something that I think everyone should mark on their calendar for next summer. This is a big deal for Colorado Springs.
It absolutely is. And having been here and covered it the last time back in 2018, it was one of the highlights of my career, being able to talk to some of these golfers that I grew up watching, and to be able to cover an event of that magnitude was awesome. I'm looking forward to doing the same thing here. As you know, Doug, the PGA Tour, little hit miss sometimes with stops through Colorado. They just were here in Colorado, which is awesome. But it seems like the Senior Open has certainly made a point to keep coming back to Colorado, and to Colorado Springs specifically. What is it about the course, the city, the state, that makes it such a desirable location for this event?
Well, I think a couple things. Colorado had a tour event for a long time, and what we've seen with tour events is they start to diminish after time, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how hard you work at trying to keep it fresh. And so I think Colorado is a very sought after market for a lot of golf governing bodies, and the USGA has certainly recognized that. And, the Broadmoor really brings together everything, right? It's got a spectacular golf course, number one. It has great history. And then, you bring the USGA to a resort like this, and these people travel all over the world all the time. And for them to come and experience Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region, and then step out of their hotel room and go to work, makes it really easy for them to keep coming back. And, I give a lot of credit to the Broadmoor for staying in line. They do a lot of work behind the scenes to stay relevant and stay in this rotation. And I think that the past history, the support that we've gotten, and the crowds that we get, makes it real easy for the USGA to say yes every time they come asking.
Doug Habgood, Executive Director of the 45th U.S. Senior Open Championship, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. So we got a few events. We got some things, which golfers are going to be in form and all that kind of stuff come June. It might change a little bit, but on the tour right now, how's the health of the tour? Because when it came through here, it seemed like it was in as good a spot as it's ever been, and I would imagine it's only been improved upon since.
Yes, it has, and I think the amount of players. What I find interesting is the amount of international players. If you look back at the Champions Tour 5-6 years ago, it was dominated by the U.S. players, and now the players like Patrick Harrington and Ernie Els and Jimenez, Richard Bland won it last year. And then you have guys like KJ Choi and Vijay Singh, Mike Weir's a Canadian. So I think that really adds to the national championship and the breadth of this field. And the other thing that's great about a senior open is that the number of amateurs that qualify, only so many players are exempt. The rest of them have to play their way in, and we get a lot of great stories from all over the world and all over the country that make their way to the Broadmoor. And trust me, it's an experience that, they'll cherish the rest of their lives to be able to play with the superstars of golf, arm in arm for a week. And so that's really what's so great about an open is that, it really is open to anybody that can qualify and make their way to Colorado Springs next summer.
Well, I know John Smoltz, former Atlanta Braves pitcher, was a big draw last time around, and he raved about how amazing the opportunity was for him to get to tee it up among some of the best golfers in the world. When somebody is going to come to the event, or given what day we are approaching very quickly, is going to give someone the gift of going to the U.S. Senior Open Championship, I would imagine that there are kind of slightly different experiences that you can give the special person in your life. Will you talk about a little bit what certain tickets may or may not get you over the course of the weekend?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll start by saying that, we've intentionally made sure that our prices are affordable. So our ticket prices start under $30 for adults. Kids 17 and under admitted free every day of the event, not just, a few days. So, theoretically, a family of 4 or 5 or 6 could actually come through our gates for less than $60 on a gallery ticket. Then we have our trophy club, which is a upgraded ticket that gets you on the grounds and then access to the gallery or the trophy club area where you have upscale food and beverage and a whole pavilion and activities there. We actually have one other level, which is sort of an all-in VIP, which is our Champions Club, which has buffet and beer and wine included. So there's lots of options. The one thing we do have just a few left of is our holiday gift package right now. That's available online on ussenioropen.com, or you can go to the Broadmoor Golf Shop. But this is sort of a throwback where there's actually tickets in the lanyard, physical tickets, not just a barcode on your phone, a hat from the Senior Open, and it's all put into this commemorative box, so you can pick those up at the golf shop or online. So those are some great options right now for those of you that are looking for a few more gifts, just like yourself, Ryan. And the last thing I would say is that we allow the military in free on our Wednesday practice round, and then all of our tickets going forward for Thursday through Sunday are half off for the military as our show of respect for those in our community that have done so much for our country.
Yeah, and I know in talking with some of the golfers that have come through here, the military ties in our community make it a place that they very much enjoy visiting as well. So great to see there will be plenty of members of the military out at the Broadmoor over the course of the tournament. Again, June 25th through the 29th. Wanted to get you those dates just so you can mark them on your calendar. And then, as Doug said, a slew. He didn't even scratch the surface. There's so many levels and different ways that you can give the gift of the U.S. Senior Open and get that. Again, golf fan, sports fan, absolutely, but just somebody that wants to experience something that comes around every once in a great while. That holiday gift package that Doug was talking about looks awesome. They have a picture of it on the website, ussenioropen.com. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's the one.
Okay. And then obviously for if you're local, you may know the Broadmoor's website very well, and you can certainly navigate your way to getting those as well. Anything I miss? I'm sure, Doug, you and I are going to. Oh, I did want to ask you, too, about the one player that when you think of golf in the state of Colorado, you think of Hale Irwin, right? I mean, how cool is it to have him a part of this event as the honorary chair?
Yeah, I think for those of you that know Hale, he's a great ambassador of sport. Obviously, he has great ties to CU, two-sport athlete, which is pretty rare to find these days, but actually competed in golf and in football, but then went on to win 3 U.S. Opens and 2 Senior Opens and got himself into the World Golf Hall of Fame. I believe he won 45 times on the Champions Tour. So just a remarkable player, remarkable man. Happened to have the pleasure of being on the call when we touched base with him and the USGA to make this offer, and very gracious, very excited about it. I think you're going to see a lot of the Irwin family in and around town come the Senior Open, which is awesome.
It will be awesome. Hale Irwin, absolute legend in golf, but even a bigger legend here in the state of Colorado. Doug, anything that I missed, anything that you want to get across? Like I said, I'm sure you and I will chat after the holidays. I appreciate you carving out some time for me today. Anything before I let you go?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity. I think what we just want to get across is that this is a big opportunity for Colorado Springs to show the world what we're all about here. So the more people that are on camera and out there following the players, it's all appreciated. And I would encourage all of you to take a look at those ticket options that we have. We bring the $24 million impact to the region. We've had 130,000 fans through our gates in the past, and we currently have ticket buyers from 41 states and 3 countries. So it just tells you the power of this. I think the pride that the community takes in this event, and again, invite everyone to get engaged. If you can't find a way to get in, reach out to us at our office, and we'd love to find a way to get you through the door.
Yeah, and with the interest around the country, that also means that maybe acting in as quickly as you can is probably a good thing as well, to make sure that you secure your tickets, whatever level of ticket you want. Make sure that you're there for as much of the U.S. Senior Open as you could possibly be. Doug, really appreciate the time. Like I said, you and I'm sure we'll be chatting as we draw closer to the event. Thanks for the time. Have a happy holidays, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. Keep up the good work, Ryan. Thank you for the time.
Yep, my pleasure. Doug Habgood, the executive director of the 45th U.S. Senior Open Championship, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. USSeniorOpen.com is where you go. Yeah, the gift package with the hat and look, I get it, the convenience of having the ticket on your phone and everything like that, but I remember, when I think I still have most every ticket for sporting events that I attended growing up, the big ones. My family had Rockies season tickets, so I didn't keep every single Rockies ticket that I collected over the years. But like when I went to the All-Star game, not the most recent one at Coors Field, the one before that, with Griffey and McGuire and Sosa and the whole lot of them back in the late 90s. I still have my ticket for that. I have tickets for playoff games. I have my ticket for the U.S. Senior Open from 2018 when I went. Some about that. I mean, I don't know. I've been called a hoarder of sports stuff in the past, I guess that. But that's just really cool to me, to get a whole gift box with the hat, with the actual tickets in it and stuff. Really cool gift. And Yes, as Doug referred to many a time, and I think I mentioned it once before during the show, I am not done with my Christmas shopping. In fact, I fear that I've only just begun. So Doug and company coming through in the clutch with this really cool package. Again, ussenioropen.com is where you can go to get those. And look, what I said to Doug, I mean, this is going to be one of the big things we're going to be doing in the year 2025. We're going to be promoting it. We're going to be talking about it. I'll be out there doing the show, all sorts of stuff. It will be a big deal this summer. And I've already talked to my friend and colleague Jay Ritchie about combining forces. Obviously, he hosts Tee to Green Radio every Sunday here on Extra Sports 1300. So we're going to make it a big deal in the year 2025. So very cool. I had a blast in 20 and that was, I had never been to a tour event, Champions Tour or PGA Tour before that. In 2018, I had been to celebrity golf tournaments, but that was really neat. And John Smoltz had qualified, and all these golfers you watch growing up close and personal. Pretty cool. Great way to instill the love of the sport too to your kids, to bring them around the best of the best. So ussenioropen.com on that. 3 stories that are driving the show coming up. Don't forget New Orleans and Green Bay to close out the week. I need Jordan Love to have a decent game for me to advance to my fantasy league championship. So that's coming up at 5:30. More business to attend to here on Drive Time Sports before that. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this fine Monday. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All, New Orleans and Green Bay on the Monday night slate, and a great place to watch it. Hooters of Colorado Springs, with craveable wings, ice cold beer, plenty of big screen TVs, and the world famous Hooters girls. It is the number one franchise in the league. Tonight, catch the fan filler 10 boneless wings, fries, a dressing, and a drink for only $16.59. So our coverage of the Packers and the Saints starts at the bottom of the hour, much to attend to in the meantime. Here are the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one. You could have probably seen this coming, right?
There were 3 penalties in that final drive. And look, it keeps continuing. So we got to do a better job coaching, because it's not like it's new. And so it'll cost you in games.
That's Broncos head coach Sean Payton after the Broncos gave up a 21-10 lead to lose to the Chargers, failing to clinch a playoff spot. But it had followed a somewhat familiar pattern for this Broncos team. Much of their season, and I think the NFL in many ways is built on this. The mistakes you make. Right? If you make the most mistakes, you're probably going to lose the football game. And what the Broncos have done is done a great job, even as mistake-prone as they have been throughout much of the season. I would say go back to the Baltimore game and recall all these games, right? Save for Atlanta, there probably hasn't been one game where the Broncos haven't committed either the big mistake or plenty of other mistakes that they've needed the opposing team to account for by making an even bigger mistake. I mean, think about it. With the Kansas City game, the Broncos couldn't have played any better up until the last moment. And the Chiefs exploited something that the Broncos have been doing for weeks. And that's giving up pressure on kicks from the left side of the line. This Broncos team for the last 2 games has been incredibly mistake-prone. And it's just through the grace of Jameis Winston and Anthony Richardson that they came out on top in those games. The Broncos are a team that finds a way, despite their shortcomings, despite their mistakes, to beat teams that you would say they are better than. But the teams that you would classify as better than the Broncos, they never seem to find a way to be able to do that. They haven't beaten one playoff caliber team. The best they can say is that they're going to beat the eventual NFC South champs, which might be the worst division in football. But it's who they've been all season long, and they committed these mistakes, and it wasn't just the players. It was Sean Payton and his clock management at the end of the first half cost them those 3 points, and it just felt like the momentum swung the other way, and the Broncos could never get it back because the Chargers are not a team that's going to commit that massive mistake. And that will be the next step of the Denver Broncos. Is can they limit the mistakes? Can they swing the pendulum back their way against teams that won't just give it to them? they've done a great job of taking what teams have given them, but the teams that don't give them much, Baltimore, Kansas City, the Chargers twice, Pittsburgh, they can't take from them. And that's going to be the next step in this team's evolution, in this team's rebuilding, is figuring out how they take from these good teams instead of just being given or taking from bad teams. But the good news in all of this is that it was never about the Charger game. This stretch run of the season coming out of the bye, excuse me, it was never really about the Chargers. It was about Indy and Cincy. That's why Sean Payton allowed the game to be flexed to Thursday night, because he knew that both Indy and Cincinnati were the games that because they didn't see the Chargers getting beat down by the Buccaneers. What they saw is that the games that would be of great consequence to them, that would allow them to clinch a playoff spot, were Indy and Cincinnati. And those have been teams that follow the pattern that the Broncos have been in this year. Cincinnati is tricky for sure because they have a dynamic offense that no one in the last 2 months has been able to stop. But they have a defense that the Broncos should be able to slice up. What wins out? Can the Broncos get that one stop on Joe Burrow? One or two might do it. But this is what Sean Payton was banking on. We take care of Indy. We take care of Cincy. We're in the postseason. They would have liked to beat the Chargers. They were hoping to beat the Chargers. But really, it's about Cincinnati. And in that way, I suppose the Broncos, everyone together now, are on to Cincinnati. Here's story number 2. When a win really isn't that impressive.
To Murray, 8 on the shot clock. Murray, 6 to go. Jamal Murray. Murray pulls the trigger. Good!
Altitude television on the call. Jamal Murray's jumper sent the Nuggets to overtime last night, and they would end up prevailing over the mighty, 3-win New Orleans? I think they have 5 wins. My apologies to Pelicans fans everywhere. The Nuggets needed a great double-digit comeback and overtime to beat a team that is in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, and this has happened far too often to this basketball team. They just had it happen to them in Portland. I was in the building. I saw it with my own eyes and face. A team in Portland where I can't even name 4 guys on the team beat the Denver Nuggets. And then there's the Washington game. And the problem with that Washington game and the problem with potentially losing to the Pelicans is not just that game. It's what the Nuggets were on the heels of. The Nuggets had just gotten beaten by Portland with a valiant fourth quarter effort, a monster fourth quarter effort, and in the end, they just ran out of time. The Blazers could wind the clock down. Anthony Simons with that layup as time expired. Right? They just learned this lesson. Don't mess around with these bad teams. And yet they did that last night. And it nearly cost them. Could you imagine if they had lost back-to-back games against Portland and New Orleans? It's happening too much. This is not a team that gets the benefit of the doubt because we are wondering whether they are even close to the team they were 2 years ago. They don't get the benefit of the doubt. You don't get to minimize losses to these bad teams, especially when they're on the heels of bad losses. Got to bounce back. And the catalyst, as much as I have been defending his honor, it was replacing Michael Porter. Are those trade rumors getting to him? Because he was not good last night. He played 23 minutes in a 53-minute basketball game. His removal from the game for Russell Westbrook was what spurred the Denver Nuggets to that comeback and that win. He was not on the floor in overtime. Now, he's hardly made this a thing with him, but last night it was. That's the thing you point at and say that changed the Nuggets' fortunes. It's not good timing for a guy that has been linked to about half the teams in the NBA over the past week. But tonight, another night. And a chance for the Nuggets to perhaps not mess around. Maybe the third time is the charm. Phoenix is not good. Phoenix has their own problems. You're at home. Beat Phoenix and don't wait for the fourth quarter to come back. But there is the team that is the subject of story number 3. All is right with the Colorado Avalanche.
Kiviranta, can he get the hat trick? You bet he can! Throw the chapeau! This time he's on the right side of the hat trick.
Connor McGahey on the Altitude Sports Radio Network. Avs pick off another win against a Kraken team that you want to see the dichotomy between the Nuggets and the Avalanche right now. Nuggets have ran roughshod through Anaheim, San Jose, and Seattle. Why? Because they should. And they get a 5-2 win over Seattle last night. And bigger picture, once the Avs kind of got over the little bug that was going around the locker room, they've played much better hockey since returning from that very fruitful road trip. And the goaltending has been not just adequate. Since Alexander Georgiev was pulled in the first period against Buffalo, the Avs have the best save percentage in the NHL. There are Boston Bruins, Swayman, Omark vibes right now where the Avs could go either guy, Wedgwood, Blackwood, doesn't matter. They're going to get the level of goaltending they need to win hockey games. Now, once the playoffs roll around, that's Mackenzie Blackwood's net. Make no mistake about it. But for right now, guys need nights off. You go with the hot hand. All of this is good. Avs are not just getting adequate goaltending, they're getting exceptional goaltending over the past couple of weeks. Will it continue? Remains to be seen. But after a couple of little blips there against Utah, Avs are back rolling along, beating the teams that they absolutely should beat. Something to be said for that. Broncos are doing that. Nuggets far too often haven't done that. Avs are doing that right now. They're accumulating points to put themselves in a better position once the calendar turns to January. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. One more segment on this Monday coming up next. Tom checks in on the text line. 719-247-1313. Earlier talking about the belly flop that the college football playoff did over the weekend. He asks, would CU have been better than SMU in terms of the game they gave Penn State? And I think it's reasonable, especially in SMU's case, because and that was the one that I thought maybe if it was high scoring, that SMU would have a chance. Quarterback play was their biggest issue. So, yeah, I would say that CU could have given Penn State a better run than SMU ended up doing. I think Alabama could have. I think Miami could have. But that's beyond the point in a couple of different ways. One, it's beyond the point because CU did not deserve to be included. Right? You know, last year, it's funny. Last year, the conversation was about who deserves it, who has earned it. Right? That was the argument for FSU. Even though they lost Jordan Travis, they deserved to get in. They earned it. Even though everyone knew that Florida State would have zero chance to win no matter who they would play. They had zero chance, but they earned it. They deserved it. And now a year later, we have this expanded playoff where we can actually go more to who deserves it. Right? When you only get 4, like, you only get so many spots, and you got to make sure it's a made-for-television product. You got to get the best teams in there. And maybe even you argue that there were more than 4 teams that deserve to get in, but you only had 4 spots. And now this year, it should be about who met to, do the Isaiah Thomas thing, who met the criteria. And now we don't want any of these teams in. We want the best teams. We want the teams that would give Penn State and Ohio State and Texas and Notre Dame a better run for their money. That's what everyone was complaining about last year. It wasn't about FSU's viability as a national championship contender. It was that they deserved it. They earned it. Well, here I'm saying that these 12 teams, based on the criteria available, earned their way in. Should have been in. They didn't miss anybody. But the games are bad, and now everyone's like, well, it should have been the best teams. And I'm not saying you're saying that, Tom. You were just asking about CU. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think the general sentiment is why'd they put in SMU? Alabama would have been better. Didn't we complain for years that Alabama was getting in just because they were Alabama? And they didn't actually earn their way in or qualify to be selected because of their resume? And, the talk coming out of the SEC warps so much of it. And in social media is this way. Right? These SEC fans come out of the woodwork. Lane Kiffin comes out of the woodwork. And it seems like that's the voice, that's the will of the people, and it may not be. It may just be the loud SEC truthers who grew very silent when Tennessee was getting absolutely destroyed by Ohio State. But that's why I say it's not to me about relitigating who got in and who wasn't in. The fact of the matter is there just aren't 12 national championship contenders. It's much closer to 4 teams than it is 12. And I thought they expanded too much, and they're going to expand more next year. The expansion of the playoff is not commensurate with the leveling of the playing field that I think is going on in college football. But it's going to take time. We didn't need 12 teams. Cut it off at 8, and I think we would have had more of a compelling product. It's not about the teams that got left out. There just weren't enough good teams to fill out a bracket. Happens in the NFL every year. Every year there's a team that gets in that gets destroyed in the first round, and we go, what was the point of this? Well, the point of this was to give more fan bases hope that they can make the playoffs and to generate revenue and ratings for the NFL. And we all buy into it because none of us are boycotting any of this. We co-sign it. And then we look and like, we don't really need that many teams. No, we don't. It'll get better. I think it will. I think we have a chance to have an incredibly compelling semifinal and championship game. But some business to attend to before then. And that's what you saw over the weekend. Want to bring you this from QC Kinetics. Right now you're probably focused on other people right now, right? Got to get all those gifts. You're worrying about what to do for other people. After that, or maybe at the same time, like just be cognizant of this. You should do something for yourself, which is finally addressing the root cause of that chronic joint pain. QC Kinetics can help you do that. These other treatments, steroids, surgery, pain pills, they either don't address the root cause or they're just a maintenance that you're going to inevitably have to go in and get worked on again. QC Kinetics gives you a chance to get lasting relief for that shoulder and back pain. Imagine a new year without those achy joints, without taking pain pills, without taking steroid shots. They use the healing properties of your own body to attack the root cause of your pain, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. It's the future of medicine, and it's catching on. Consultation's free, so call QC Kinetics. Do something for yourself while you're doing something for everybody else in your life. 719-347-1988. 719-347-1988. QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. It has been my pleasure to serve you. My thanks to Doug Habgood, the executive director of the 45th U.S. Senior Open Championship, for joining me. That's coming up in June. Mark your calendars, the 25th through the 29th. We will certainly remind you along the way. And USSeniorOpen.com, if you're looking for a last-minute gift, I think that that holiday gift box with the hat and the tickets and everything to the U.S. Senior Open be a pretty cool gift. So USSeniorOpen.com is where you can go for that. If you are still out there shopping, I will see you shortly. Have a good rest of your night. The Packers and the Saints coming up next.